I push into that idea of being a role model than a role model.
Right.
Role model fits into perfectionism and role model fits into authenticity and transparency.
I like that.
And that was the time that I just became a real person.
Right. You let everything down.
Like for me, it was no longer about the clients I worked with
Yeah.
or the leaders I work with or how much I get paid.
Yep.
It was now about, Hells, do the work because you're actually doing this for real human beings.
Yeah.
And real human beings need real conversations.
Correct.
They need to, they need to have the real conversations.
Yeah.
And I feel if you can facilitate the real conversations, you're doing the work that is necessary.
Let's talk DXB. Real conversations by real people. Hayley.
Hey.
I'm so excited to have you in the studio.
Thank you for having me, Sharon.
Literally, when I saw that you were coming to Dubai, and I was like, okay, God, let's do something here, because I've been listening to your podcasts and I've seen how your profile has expanded and grown, and from a really authentic place.
Thank you.
I'm definitely in a season of trying to live fully authentically, not caring about judgment, etc.
Yes.
So when I was like, okay, the renowned international public speaker Hayley is in Dubai. This is a Let's Talk DXB conversation.
Wow.
So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. I think when you reached out, I was like, yeah, I'm honored. And obviously it was the time I was able to fit, thank God.
Yeah.
And I think, these type of conversations I thrive in and I love, because I think authenticity is everything. I think, especially in the Western world, not to say that obviously Dubai is kind of Western, but it is in a way, because even though it's Middle East, it's Western, obviously it's got, it's Westernized, impact. And I think it's just so easy to feel like you have to like have it all together, to fake it until you make it. The quotes that people tell you that you have to, live into. But something I'm constantly learning is that, perfectionism isn't real and perfectionism isn't healthy. Dr. Brené Brown talks about how perfectionism doesn't stop you from being judged. It actually stops you from being seen.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are not seen because they're trying to be perfect.
Yeah. Oh, okay. We've gone into it already. Literally all of the words you were saying, I was like, yeah, this is so true. And this is why I started Let's Talk. I came from a very difficult season, still working through it as well. And I've always been, I think also West African background in our household, everything has to seem together.
Yeah.
You don't talk about anything that's happening in your home. It has to be perfect. And I've got quite an accommodating, I'm breaking that barrier, accommodating personality. I had that as a child. So anything you kind of told me to do, I'd do it. And then I found myself in a really difficult season. I was like, I need to express, I need to talk, I need to meet others that have navigated, divorce and single parenthood, etc., and lift the shame around it. So, but in Dubai, which is it's a great city. I've been here for 10 years. So we'll be here. Even in this season of when it's difficult, I'm still here by God's grace.
Yeah.
But it's very much everything has to look perfect.
Yeah,
everything's shiny and glitz, and the women are beautiful, the men are handsome.
Yeah.
But what happens when you're broken and it doesn't look so perfect? So Let's Talk is really around authentic and honest conversations.
I love that.
Hence why I needed to come and speak to you about authenticity, because I feel like your journey and the start of your career has probably come from a very authentic place. If you'd like to share more about that.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, there's so many different stories, so many different avenues. I come from a single parent household myself. My mum's a single parent.
Okay.
And I didn't grow up without a dad. And I remember kind of feeling like my identity was kind of skewed because I didn't have a man affirming me. So I feel like I was somebody who was always looking for affirmation. I was always looking for words. I was always words when my love language was affirmation. It's a big thing for me.
Yeah.
And I know that's because of the lack of words I received growing up. My mum was busy working, so I felt like she couldn't affirm me. And it's not because, she was, she didn't want to. She was working, she was a single parent. She had to do what she had to do. Yeah. And then I didn't have a father there to affirm me as well. So I feel like there was a void.
Right.
So I feel like I got to a place where I ended up being a people pleaser. I ended up wanting to do things because I needed people to affirm that.
Yeah.
So I remember that the dynamics of my story obviously come through with so many different ebbs and flows. But I think a pivotal point, it's only this year that I've actually started to open up about this, when in year 7, year 8, when I got bullied.
Right.
And I remember I got severely bullied when I was in school. And, they hacked my MySpace, Facebook, putting pictures of me next to a monkey. It was bad.
Really?
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. And, there were chant stuff like, Hayley needs to die, or Hayley. And I remember they made up a rumor. Yeah, and they made up a rumor that I had died when I was in year 7 summer holidays. And I remember feeling like the whole world had crashed because I felt like my whole year had hated me. It wasn't my whole year, but it was, it would feel like that. And, the girls that were kind of running this at the time, they were quite popular, should I say.
Yep.
And I remember like that was the first time that I had really realized how much words had impacted me.
Okay.
Even years down the line, because of the fact that even though I was bullied when I was 12, I'm 26 now, I can still see how the effects of that in terms of words that were said over me, how I'm still very sensitive to particular words because of that season of my life. And I remember being in that position where so many words were spoken over me, so many things were said over me. And I kind of vowed to myself that I would never use my words to ever condemn. I never use my words to ever belittle. I would always use my words to uplift and to speak life. And that's kind of where my heart came in the area of public speaking. So public speaking for me is not just, you know, me being able to empower, inspire and inform. It's actually to edify and to actually make sure that people feel edified. Because I really do believe life and death is the power of the tongue, and you have the opportunity to either speak into somebody's life or into their destruction. Yeah. And I always come and say, I want to speak into someone's destiny over their destruction. So it came to around year 12 is when I started exploring, year 11 actually, I started exploring public speaking. Right. So I ran for young mayor of my borough in London. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I ran for mayor of Newham, young mayor of Newham when I was 15 at the time.
So young.
Yeah. But I think, you know, God's kind of put this call for my heart for justice and for young people to be advocated for, because I'm doing a lot of the things that I was doing when I was 15. Right. It's just 10 years, and now that I have money, I have the opportunity to travel, and I'm doing it, I guess, on a bigger scale. Yep. And recognized more globally, should I say. But I started running for young mayor. So I remember me and my campaign lot used to be outside Stratford Westfield campaigning, vote Hayley for young mayor. She's going to change Newham. She's going to inspire young people and get young people in terms of their opportunities. And my whole campaign was making sure that Newham was safer for young people and making sure opportunities were there for young people, because my heart is young people. You know, Whitney Houston says it best, I believe the children are the future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. And it's biblical, that's scripture.
Yes, scripture.
You know, and I thought to myself, wow, like, you know, if you could be in a position where you can speak life into the next generation, do it. So then the following year is when I decided I actually wanted to go into public speaking, motivational speaking, should I say. And I remember a speaker coming into my school and them coming to say, hey, like, you know, motivating us. And I thought to myself, wow, like, this is actually what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I could just see how the impact of his words had impacted me and the different, you know, students within the room. And I was just kind of like, this is what I want to be known for. Yeah. I want to be known for speaking into destinies. I want to be known to inspire young people to dream bigger, to achieve higher, to understand that there's more to life. Yeah. And that was kind of where my journey started. And so I started speaking in my own school first, my own secondary school, running my own sessions. And then I started doing other schools, because I would film the sessions in my school, put it on my Twitter, put it on YouTube. And then other schools would be like, you need to come and speak to my other students. Then I go to other schools. And then when I went to university, I started running sessions in uni. And then other universities would say, can you come here? Can you come here? Then when I was 18, I wrote a book. But in that time of me doing all of this, I didn't look after myself.
Right.
And this feeds into the perfectionism. Right. Because I had built up this brand from a young age, I felt like I needed to have it all together. I felt like because I was a person motivated, I always had to be motivated. Yeah. But there was a lot of trauma and a lot of things that I hadn't necessarily dealt with. And because of the fact that I was the one that was always speaking life into people, I didn't really have anyone speaking life into me. Right. So it got to a point where I was basically the empty water bottle that was pouring out water. So I'm pouring out to everyone else and I'm empty. I didn't have anything. Wow. So it got to a point when I went to my first year of university and I became severely depressed. And I never thought it would ever be me. You know, I remember when I was in school and people would say, oh, I'm dealing with depression. I used to be like, what do you mean depression? Like, be happy.
Yeah, what's the problem?
Yeah, what's the problem? We're too young to be depressed.
Yeah.
And, you know, I started feeling depressed. I started feeling anxious. It got to a point where I could no longer shower, brush my teeth. I'd lost so much weight because I stopped eating. Whoa. Couldn't leave my room. I didn't like sunlight. Like, it got so bad. And I remember there was a conversation that was happening outside of my dorm room at the time, because I hadn't left my room for a long time. And I remember one of my roommates was saying, oh, have you seen Hayley? And they're like, oh, Hayley's gone into London. But I'd never gone to London. I was there, but because they'd never seen me. And I remember even my university at the time had emailed saying that my attendance had dropped below 30%.
Oh my goodness.
Because I couldn't leave the room. I was always having panic attacks. So depression just grabbed me. And
did you have a space to talk to someone about it?
No, because at the time, vulnerability wasn't something that I found power in. Vulnerability wasn't something that I felt was possible. Yep. I thought that if anything, I'm weak because I am feeling depressed.
And you had to have it together.
Right.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I've got this speaking brand. People know me for speaking. You know, and I cared a lot what other people think. You know, I grew up in a digital age, which means social media was a big thing. You know, I grew up on the MSN days from when I was like 8 years old.
Okay.
So I always was aware of the fact that I had more than one eye watching me because of social media.
Yep.
And I remember getting to a point where I was just kind of like, man, like I can't do this. Like and this is when I started now feeling a little bit suicidal. And I remember my mum calling me, and you know, we you know, African mums, you know, if you miss the call once, you know, you might get away with it. The second time, the police will be at your door.
Yep,
right?
exactly.
So after I saw like a few missed calls, I was like, let me just pick up a call.
Because the police would be at your door.
Right.
Yes, yeah.
So I pick up the phone and she just knew from as soon as, you know, I just said hello, like she just knew I was in a good place.
Right, okay.
So she came down, she got me. And I would have thought that, you know, going back home, things would have been easier or things would have, you know, gotten better. But I think if anything, I'd got worse.
Yeah.
Because I started to feel like a burden to my family.
Yes,
I felt like now that I was in my own room and my own space, like I'm just a burden to myself.
Yeah.
But when you're back at home, you feel like a burden onto your own family. And I feel like that's what drove my suicidal thoughts worse.
Wow.
I remember it just got so bad to the extent that once again, I wasn't leaving my room. I wasn't going downstairs. Like the only place that I was going was to the toilet to urinate. And I was hardly urinating because I was hardly drinking water and I was hardly, you know, eating. And I was in and out of hospital as well because, you know, I was so dehydrated or, you know, just feeling sick because obviously I wasn't eating and obviously just my body was just starting to kind of go for a shutdown. I remember my older brother sitting down, coming into the room, sitting down, having a conversation with me. And, you know, behind where he was sitting behind was a big picture of me smiling from my 18th birthday. So I had an 18th, I had a big 18th birthday party and they blew up obviously a picture of me and it was we hanged it up in my house. Yeah. And that picture, I remember my brother coming to say like, you know, this is the smile that I miss. Like what happened? Like, where is she type thing? And I remember him saying that I want to share a story about Muhammad Ali to you. Okay. And the whole story was basically about Muhammad Ali. You know, he gets into the ring, he starts to fight and everyone's saying, Muhammad, you know, you can do this. Muhammad, fly like a butterfly, sting like a bee. And then Muhammad gets knocked down. And, you know, he says, you know, everyone could be cheering Muhammad, get up and fight. Muhammad, get up and fight. But it's actually up to Muhammad to get up and fight. And he says, Hayley, we can all be cheering you on saying you can get up and fight. Like, we believe in you. We can say, we can affirm you. But it's like, it's a decision that you have to make to actually get up and fight. And he left the room and I still had the pills. And that was when I made a decision that I wasn't going to take my life. And, you know, a lot of people think, okay, yeah, cool, you overcome, you know, a suicidal place. Like so the next day you're happy. No, it took me months.
Oh, it's a journey.
It took me months. I had the ebbs and flows of life. I still sometimes was feeling depressed, feeling anxious. It took me probably still another 2 months before I could leave my house without having a panic attack. You know, I remember the first time I got on the train after not being on the train for like 7 months or 6 months because every single time I got anywhere, I was having a panic attack. Like I remember that time when I got onto the train, I only took 2 stops and I remember literally like tearing up because I was like, I could see the growth. Yeah. And nobody would ever know how much that moment meant to me. Yeah. And I remember, obviously I'd been off social media this whole time. So I'd been off social media for about 5 months. Yeah. And I remember coming on my Snapchat I literally remember I had a bonnet on. I came on my Snapchat and I had lots of messages where people were like, yo, Hells, like, where you at? Because everyone obviously knew me for my motivational content. Everyone always knew me to inspire, to always speak life, you know, whatever. And obviously certain people tried to message me saying, hey, like, you haven't posted for a while, I hope you're okay. And I just came and said, listen, guys, I'm just going to let you guys know that I actually tried to commit suicide earlier this year. Just like that? Just came and just said it. I just said it. Like, I had no filter. I just kind of like, listen, I was depressed, tried to commit suicide. Like, I'm not going to lie, like, I didn't know how to open up about it. This. I had about like 200 people on my Snapchat all message me and they were like, I can relate. Like, so many young people. And that's when I was like, wow, okay, I know what I'm going to speak about now. Like, I'm going to speak about this period of my life. And obviously, so I started speaking about mental health from 2016. Yeah. And, you know, I've been in particular rooms and conversations. And the interesting thing is that even though my speaking journey has evolved, because now I work with a lot of leaders. Yes. So I work with a lot of leaders, helping leaders engage with young people, but also leadership in general and consulting different CEOs. And, you know, you'd be so surprised that even though mental health issues are increasing, the age is decreasing, but also the age is increasing as well.
Increasing, right? Yeah.
Because some of the conversations I'm having with people who are very influential CEOs or big leaders who could be in their 60s and they're opening up about their depression or opening
And
up
only
about,
now, right? Because I feel like that generation particularly, you would not be talking about it.
because vulnerability was seen as a weakness.
Correct.
So now vulnerability is now seen as a power,
Yes.
which is the message I'm always trying to push.
Yeah.
And I remember just kind of being in that place after opening up. Even the masterclass that we did the other day, and you know, most people know me for, if you're coming to any of my talks, you probably will cry. And it's not because of my story. It's because I make you understand the power of yours. And I make you understand that nobody should ever muzzle you for that story. If anything, your story is the most powerful thing you hold. No one can ever take it away. No one can ever tailor it. No one should ever steal it. No one should ever add to it. You have to own that. And the thing that I always say about storytelling is responding to trauma, where ranting is when you react to it. So we have a lot of people who are on platforms who are ranting. They're ranting about women, ranting about men, ranting about parents, ranting about divorce, ranting about this, ranting about faith, ranting about religion. And it's because there's a trauma attached to it and they're reacting to it. They've never responded to it. And so for me, it got to a point when I first started sharing, when I came and said, oh guys, I tried to commit suicide, I was ranting because I had been in a really dark place. I'd felt really alone. At that point, it was like, okay, let me just tell you guys where I've been, since everyone's
just kind of wanted to let it out.
Just wanted to let it out. And I never actually had the opportunity to process it. So now, obviously, you know, years down the line, I can now actually tell my story properly because I've actually responded to that period of my life.
You've done the work around it.
Processed it, done the work, I've gone to therapy. I've had the conversations, I've been coached, I've been consulted, I've, had to ask myself the hard questions, what triggered you? And then obviously also along the way, I've had different things that have happened. I remember in 2018, one of my closest friends committed suicide. Yeah.
What?
Yes.
From knowing your journey, your story.
Yeah, was it 2018 or 2019? 2019, actually.
And they never felt that they could share.
I mean, I knew that she had mental health issues.
Right.
Yeah, that period of my life was
been
definitely hard. It was hard because I remember the day I found out she had committed suicide, and the day I found out that she took her life, I had just been booked for one of the biggest speaking engagements of my life. And it was an international talk. So I had the call at around 11 a.m. Gassed, I'm happy. Yeah, what? Cool, I'm about to go abroad, about to go Norway, speak at a conference called She Conference. They had the former Prime Minister of Norway speaking. Big conference, Oslo Spectrum, big arena. It was like groundbreaking, and that was like that for me in the area of public speaking. That was a real shifting moment for my career. That was what really exposed me to different countries. That was actually my first international talk where somebody else flew me out.
Right, got it.
So it was like a big moment for me.
Oh my gosh.
So I had that conversation around 11 a.m. And then I had a phone call at 5 p.m. You know those people who never call you?
Oh, so you know something's up then.
Someone's, So I remember my cousin calling me. My cousin never phones me. She never calls me. I just knew as soon as I saw 2 missed calls from her, I knew something happened. And I knew it happened specifically with my friend.
Really?
Because she knew my friend. She was a family friend of my friend.
Got it, okay.
And my friend, at the time, she was in a bit of a rocky place.
Okay.
The last time I'd seen her, obviously I'm a person of faith, the last time I'd seen her, I prayed for her. So the last time I'd seen her, something just told me she's not okay.
Right.
So I grabbed her and I said, let me pray for you.
Yeah.
And I just was praying for her and I was just like, just God keep her, just keep her mind, just give her strength. And I just felt like something was wrong, but I couldn't, I didn't want to pry. I didn't want to be too invasive. And she was like, thank you. So she messaged me, right after that. I was like, you don't know how much I needed that. I love you and stuff like that. And, we'd been talking prior up to everything that happened. We'd been speaking about me mentoring her in the area of public speaking.
Right,
she wanted to be a speaker.
Right, yes.
And she wanted to do events. And so the last content that she uploaded was her speaking at one of her first ever speaking engagements. And I remember getting a call at around maybe 5, 6 p.m. And I remember her just saying, she's taking her own life. And I remember everything just, I don't know how to explain it. It's like everything paused.
How?
It was like,
Yeah, I don't even know what.
it was like, what? And I was so close to calling back the other event and telling them to cancel.
I can't do it.
And I did cancel some talks around that time because it made me question. It made me question the work that I'm doing.
Because if that's what I was like, if you're doing this and someone that's right next to you, close to you, you would have felt a sense of like, not saying you did at all.
Oh, I felt
did
guilt.
I fail?
I felt guilt.
Yeah,
I felt
all of
guilt.
these emotions.
I felt like I failed.
Yeah.
I felt like I'd failed her.
Yeah.
I felt like who am I doing this for? Is it for views? Is it for money?
I understand.
You question it because obviously I get paid. I'm a paid speaker. So you start to just question it and then you start to think like, rah, how integral are you with this message?
Oh, God.
Are you actually checking up on your people? So it made me question how much I check up on others, how much I check up on myself. And that definitely was the shift. 2019 was the biggest shift of my speaking career.
That's hard.
Because it made me go within myself.
Yeah.
It made me actually ask myself like those hard questions. Yeah. But it made me also, it also reminded me that along the way, I probably I'm going to not encounter something like this to that extent. But along the way, you're going to encounter the setbacks. And are you going to be able to push through it, you know? And are you going to be willing to speak out and speak up about even the areas that are still sensitive to you?
Yeah.
And I probably would say this year is probably the first year. The last podcast that I actually shared this on, I cried. So this is probably one of the first times I'm telling that story about crying.
Thank you for sharing.
Because it really did something to me in a sense of it made me more than anything. I have this whole thing, and it's probably one of my most booked keynotes, which is I push into that idea of being a role model than a role model. Right. Role model fits into perfectionism, and role model fits into authenticity and transparency.
I like that.
And that was the time that I just became a real person.
Right. You let everything down.
Like for me, it was no longer about the clients I worked with or the leaders I work with or how much I get paid. Yep. It was now about, Hells, do the work because you're actually doing this for real human beings.
Yeah.
And real human beings need real conversations.
Correct.
They need to, they need to have the real conversations. And I feel if you can facilitate the real conversations, you're doing the work that is necessary.
That resonates so much. My tagline for Let's Talk is always real conversations by real people.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to strip any of that kind of like pretense or it's perfect, it's good. Yeah, obviously when there are successes, celebrate. I think, we have to glorify God's work when things are good. But equally, I think it needed to be a space where life happens. But, we need to hear from and be encouraged of these conversations when it is hard. But equally when you push, because the pushing through... I tell you, the pushing through, it takes a lot. It
takes a lot. And I think a lot of people, maybe because of the fact that I'm privy to quite some influential figures in corporate and even in the music industry, because some of the people that I coach are actually celebrities. I won't ever name clients.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But I've had the opportunity of working with like different influential figures, and you'll be so surprised how lonely they can be. Yeah. Even though they can get millions of views, influencer, whoever they are, and they are so lonely and they still need that affirmation and they still need that, that coaching in the area of purpose or that coaching in the area of speaking or that coaching in the area of processing and learning how to actually be a storyteller, actually being able to respond to your trauma rather than react to it.
Yes.
And, some of the work that I've done even with CEOs, big CEOs, where I ask them like, how do you feel about, being a CEO? And they, every single day they feel imposter syndrome. Yeah. They feel like, I don't even know how the hell I got this job.
How did I get here?
I don't even know how I got here.
Yeah.
And those are the type of conversations I thrive in. I remember working with, a client out in the USA, and I was with their leadership team. And I was with their leadership team, probably about 300 people in the room.
Right.
And I did an exercise where I got everyone in the room to anonymously write something that they've been through that no one else in the room knows.
Okay.
And at the end, I ended up interviewing their senior leader, who's a CVP of one of the biggest tech companies in the world. And I got to sit down, and I got them to share something that they had faced whilst they had been working there.
Yep.
They'd been working there for 25 years.
Okay.
Something that they had faced that had been working there that no one else in the room had known. And they had shared when they found out, the moment they found out their dad passed away. And they were at work when it happened. And, you know, they opened up and it got teary, it got emotional. And everyone in the room came back and said, now I feel like I know my leader.
Can you imagine?
And I said to her, and I said it to the team, that I said, if you guys can learn the power of transparency and the power of vulnerability, every sale you are praying and wishing for, you'll hit it. Because now you have synergy on a spiritual level. Now you have synergy on an emotional level. Because you understand and you extend grace.
Yeah.
Not only to other people, you extend grace to yourself.
Yes.
Because the thing that I'd got them to understand is that you are not the only one. You're not the only one that is going through the hardships. And I remember when I had to read out, so obviously I got them all to write it down. I had to read out the things that I'd written out.
Yeah.
And you say, some will come and say, I went through divorce, no one knew. My child got diagnosed with leukemia, domestic violence.
All in this room, they're colleagues, right?
All of them, they're all colleagues. And some of them had been working together, I'm saying max 20 years. And this is the first time, obviously, but no one knows who's writing anything.
Yeah.
And also, I'm the only person that's reading it, so no one can even clock the handwriting or whatever.
Yeah, it's a safe space.
Exactly. And then also, this was in person, but there was also virtual. There's probably about 200 more virtual people online.
Okay.
So I had to read out the virtual ones online as well. And that was on a virtual link. And you're reading this and you're thinking, wow, like how, and some people coming to me after saying, you don't know how freeing that was for me. Because I would come every single day to work feeling like I have it all together whilst I'm dealing with one of the hardest seasons of my life. And feeling that I can't show up with that to work because it's work.
Yeah.
And I said to them, you're telling me you can't show up as yourself to work. Like, it's, you know, you can't expect 100 and you're not showing up as 100 to your workplace. And that's kind of the type of barriers that I'm breaking down in terms of corporate. And, you know, sometimes it is hard because being a young Black woman, you know, there's been some things I've done where someone's looking at my age and thinking, you're too young. You know, as I said, the time that I've spoken at this big tech company, I was 22.
Yeah.
And the person that I'd interviewed had been working there for 25 years.
Yeah.
So, of course, when someone's seen a 22-year-old interviewing somebody who'd been working there for 25 years, it's definitely questionable. And, you know, there's been, you know, people who I've spoken at, events I've spoken at, and people will openly come and be like, you know, you're young though. Yeah. Like, what should I learn? And, you know, there's been times I've been, you know, encountered racism. Yeah. You know, I share this quite often that sometimes I've gone to, not sometimes, there's been 2 occasions I've gone to a talk. Yeah. And somebody has assumed I'm part of the hospitality team.
Really? Just automatically?
Automatically. Yeah, you'll find to some people that I'm not qualified or I shouldn't be qualified to do the work that I do.
That's a question I had actually.
Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to ask you then, you are really qualified in what you do.
Thank you.
You're doing great work as well. How do you overcome when you get these people that are or perceiving that you shouldn't be in that room? How do you overcome those voices, the imposter syndrome, to really stay true to yourself?
I think my faith has been a big part. My faith has been a big part. It's being able to understand that, you know, I always say you can't play small when you serve a great God. Yeah. And my story shouldn't be my story right now. I come from a single parent household. I nearly got stabbed when I was 15. What? Realistically, I just shouldn't be where I am. I shouldn't be. I remember I was talking to my husband and he was talking about how only 5% of Black women in the UK earn over 6 figures. I'm in that bracket. I'm 26. That's not meant to happen. Do you know what I mean? So think, what? Only 5% of the...
so small.
So small, right? Which is obviously a place like Dubai or in America. Yes. It's obviously way bigger. And even when I was having that conversation with him, I was like, wow, like I hit that before 25. And the type of environment I grew up in, single parent household, not growing up with a dad, my mum being, you know, working for the NHS, going to a state school, failing university the first time, and then having nearly committed suicide, then going back to university, graduating at the age of 24, whilst running a business, working with big brands and corporations. Like, it is faith. Like, it's by the grace of God that I'll say there's certain rooms that I've stepped into, because realistically, I'm not the person who went to a private school. Yeah. I never had somebody who was, you know, who sponsored me in particular rooms. It literally was, I networked into certain places and I had favor with certain people, and they were like, let me take you under my wing. I never
put
had
yourself
that
in those environments.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even in terms of like coming somewhere like Dubai, it literally was having certain conversations on LinkedIn, even how we talked on LinkedIn, having certain conversations on LinkedIn. They're like, yeah, come to the school, or come here, or we want to do this, or collaborate here. And it was just working smart, being intentional, but leaning into faith. And I think for me, something that really helps me is, obviously people would know that I've got my husband in the background. Yeah. One is, having an amazing support system. Yeah. Having an amazing support system. I always come and say it's important to have people who speak life into you privately and not just publicly. Yes. Because we live in a public world, right? Everyone's trying to big you up publicly. Oh, you're amazing. Yes. Pat on the back. But my whole thing is like, who's speaking to you constantly privately?
And that's what you need. Because those comments, but when you're by yourself, or like the times where I'm editing till like midnight, that motivation to be like, keep going, it means something. Don't just assume that, those people, those voices externally will be the ones that will support you behind closed doors, because that's where it makes a difference.
Definitely. It's that encouragement. And then for me, as I said, it's faith. It's being able to understand there is a God who so loves you, that has a purpose behind you, and that every single room you're walking into is with intention. That there is no room that you don't have access to, because God owns everything, right? Yeah. So and also I have this whole thing where you're not my God. Yeah. I have this whole thing where it's like, no one's my God. Yeah. So it's like, whatever door you try and close, it's like, cool, like you can't.
Do you know what? This resonates, because I said I want my word to be from now. It's not like a New Year resolution. I'm not a New Year resolution person, but I'm like, who does God say I am? Because I think I'm definitely working on not being so meek, not shy. I've used this title of I'm still working on it, but I've always been private. I love people. Like, I love hearing people's stories. I'm very social in that way, but talking about myself makes me extremely uncomfortable, or putting myself out there makes me extremely uncomfortable. And there was a lady that hopefully we'll be recording, and she's so powerful. She does personal branding. She's here in Dubai. Wow. And she was like, but who does God say you are? Has he created you to be this meek, shy person? He's brought you through this season of extreme heartache, exhaustion, everything that's come with this past year, for a purpose. And if you're going to shy away from that, you're not fulfilling the purpose that he's created you for. Yeah. So when I hear that narrative, it's made me be a bit more bold in what I'm doing. And actually, when you go through a season, what more can happen? You take off all of those layers and say, here I am, this is me. So I completely agree with what you're saying.
Yeah. And even as you're speaking, I'm just always reminded of a scripture that I love, which is James chapter 1, verse 2-5, which talks about, count it all joy, brothers and sisters, when you go through certain trials and tribulations, that leads to perseverance, which leads you to being whole, not lacking anything. And, we want the perseverance and we want the wholeness, but we don't want the trials and tribulations that form that wholeness and form that perseverance. Yep. And I find that being in the rooms that I have the imposter syndrome and have the fear, it allows me to run back to God. The Bible actually says, boast in your weakness so that you can find his strength. Yep. And whenever I find that I am scared, whenever I find I'm weary, whenever I find that I'm overwhelmed, that is the opportunity for me to go and humble myself before God and be like, God, I know that you are, I know you are able to move something. And sometimes it takes those seasons that make you consecrate deeper. Yeah. It takes those seasons that make you go deeper and trust in him deeper. I definitely would say my life is a product of God's goodness. I say I want to live a Matthew chapter 5, verse 16 life. I want to live a life of the parable of the talents that, God trusts me with 5 and I'm coming back with 10. I want to live that life of an Isaiah 60 moment where, it says, arise and shine, for the glory of the Lord has come. I want it to be that, it says that the Gentiles will come at your rising. They'll come to the knowledge of the Lord at your rising. I want it to be a thing that people see my life and it doesn't make sense. Yeah. And the reality is my life doesn't make sense. Yeah. It really doesn't make sense. There's a lot of things that I really shouldn't be doing or shouldn't be having or shouldn't be tapping into. But for me, it's like, I want to be that product that shows people, hey, like, it is possible. I always say I want my life to be a reflection of possibilities and not impossibilities. Yes. you know, I always say, you know, it's important to remind people of what their possibilities are, not their limitations. So I hope that my life is just a reflection of possibilities rather than limitations.
I think also it revolves around you have been disciplined to hear God's word from like the age of 15. Your purpose was very much there. You could have definitely ignored it. You know, there's so many distractions as a teenager, and obviously the journey you've gone through bullying. That would make someone completely shy away. Like, why would I put myself out there when I'm being bullied? You know, you could hear so many different voices around that.
Yeah, of
but
course.
you've pushed yourself through to then be able to inspire others.
I'm quite compassionate. Like,
Yeah,
if anything, I've definitely say it's probably my husband that knows it best. I have a very big heart. I'm very compassionate. People think that maybe because I do speaking, or maybe because I can be quite like strict, and I have a resting face as well. So if you look at me, you might be thinking that girl's a meanie. But it's not. I'm actually not mean. I was always saying like I'm like a jammy dodger. Like on the outside, you might think I'm hard, but I'm very gooey. I'm very loving.
I mean, we're just meeting now, and I sense your energy. Like I feel so comfortable.
Yeah, I'm very loving. I'm gooey. Like I'm very like I'm touchy. Like I'm very like, oh my gosh, like let's go here. Like I'm very like, and the mad thing is that majority of my closest friends that like would know on a day to day, I'm actually not having deep conversation with my friends. Like, on a day to day, I'm just literally laughing at TikToks. Like I would like if you want to build a good relationship with me, send me funny TikToks. Like, and it's one of those things where, you know, just having those type of people that keep me integral and keep me grounded, it just helps. And I think with, you know, as I was saying, going back to what was talking about real conversations with real people, these conversations that I can have is because I've got real people around me. Like even when I was thinking about like my wedding, majority of my bridesmaids, I had 7 bridesmaids. 5 of my bridesmaids I went to secondary school with.
Oh, wow.
3 of them went out to primary school with.
Oh, so these are friendships you've had for a long, which are hard to maintain.
I'm about mileage.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm about mileage.
Beautiful.
I like growing with people.
Good.
I like evolving with people.
Yeah.
And I always say to like people, I was like, if I ever are brand new, you can beat me up. Like I come from an African household. Like it'll be a thing where I remember when I used to live at my mom's house, I'll be there going to America. I'm getting paid like a big check. I'm working with big CEOs. I come back, my mom's like, wash the dishes. Standard. My mom don't give a heck.
Like, like you're my child.
Right.
I'm like, it doesn't
like,
matter.
Even right now, like my mom's messaging me, I'm in Dubai, I'm doing my thing. She'll message me, be like, okay, Hayley, when you next come,
I need you to do X, Y,
I need to do X, Y, Z. I don't even live with my mom anymore. Like, I'll be at my mom's house. She'll be like, Hayley, make me a tea.
But it's so important.
I'm a guest.
Do you know? Like, it's important because I think it's important to remain humble. Like, Let's Talk is still very new. And by God's grace, there's been a few like PR opportunities.
Amazing.
And everyone's excited about, I feel a bit awkward around it, but everyone's excited. I'm like, one thing I said, like, if this is somewhere that it goes and I'm able to actually resource it properly and everything that comes with it, keep me humble. Like that is in my journal. It's a prayer point because I don't want to, because also you lose sight of, you know, the foundation of what this is built on. This has been built on a very humble season, which was very hard. I don't want to lose sight of that because that's the authenticity of, you know, why I'm doing it. But it's very easy to lose yourself where you need the foundations of your mum, keeping it real. Like you are washing up, you need to do this. I need you to call this auntie or uncle because it helps you to remember that as well.
That's why the closest people I have around me are like my girls from school. Like they're my people from school, people who I've journeyed with, people who saw me when I was broke, I didn't have anything. Because the reality is that cool, even though like now cool being financially like straight and being with big clients or whatever, it's like some of the friends, like my videographer, for example, the person that I normally travel with. That I normally travel with when I do like international talks. I'll never forget the first time I ever invited her to one of my keynotes and she had to top up my Oyster card because I had no money.
See.
Like I like to keep people around me who know the journey. Yeah. Because at this point as well, they also know it was God.
Yes.
Like they'll be able to look at my life now and be like, yo, I remember when didn't have money. I remember the times when we used to walk to talks. Like there used to be times when I used to steal my mom's Oyster card because I didn't have no money to top up my own. You know, and my mom had a weekly pass, so I used to be like, I just the only way I just need to take it.
London.
Right. And those are the type of people I like to surround myself with because it's not because they're not gonna remind me like who I am in a sense of remember where you come from. No. They remind me how far I've come.
Correct. Yeah.
And I think it's important that everybody should have at least that one person that will constantly remind them your growth and how far you've come, because it's a beautiful thing.
That is very important, because I think for me as well, like there's a topic that hopefully I'll do around friendships, because Dubai very expat driven. We don't have friends that we've seen from like primary school to secondary.
Of course.
I'm blessed I've got one cousin that moved here. I'm trying to shift other people, because my circle is quite small, and I've got a very good group of friends that I've had for at least 7-8 years, which is unheard of in Dubai. It's quite new when you're looking back like 20 years. But for here to have a friend of like 7-8 years,
of course, especially when you've been here for 10 years, because majority of my people that I know who've moved to Dubai, they moved to Dubai this year or in the past 2 years.
There's a lot of new people coming. So like building new friendships is a thing for a lot of people, but having solid friendships here is really difficult. So there's a lot of people that are quite lonely. Like you look at their Instagram brunches every weekend. Like life is good. But at home, they're like, someone to just come and sit with me in my living room. Let's have like a proper conversation. Very far and few between. So it's so important to have that network around you.
Yeah, I think what you just said is so important. And I think it feeds into the whole, as I said, the Western culture of feeling like, okay, cool, you got everyone liking you, you got everyone reposting you. But it's like, who's actually checking on you? Who's actually asking you, how are you?
The difficult question, like the real how are you, not the surface level.
The accountability, which is kind of like, okay, sis, like I know you've just gone through a heartbreak. How's your heart now? Do you know what I mean? Like you need the people who are going to protect your heart
100%.
And cover your heart and actually ask you those hard questions and make you reflect within yourself. And I think that's what, that's why for me, I'm so protective of my circle. Like I'm very much kind of like, cool, my closest friends, like I'm very transparent with them. They ask me the hard questions. And I'm not one person to shy away from hard conversations. I think it's necessary. It's important, especially, being somebody who's, I would say, more or less a public figure. Because I'm a public figure, I have to be very protective. Because there's always somebody watching with the intention to kind of pry or figure out what's really going on, whatnot, and obviously not with the best intention either. And that's why it's super important you have those conversations. And where I mentor a lot of young people, especially young women, with me, especially because a lot of the girls that I mentor, a lot of them are influencers. Got big platforms, big bags. And the thing is as well, which is so interesting, is that, let's say for example, now 26, even though there's money that I've seen from like contracts and speaking, it's not like influencing, which is kind of like, obviously when I'm working with like, say for example, I'm consulting a big brand or consulting a company, I'm having to have meetings. I'm having to obviously touch on my expertise. I'm having to study. I'm having to actually teach, inform on things I've studied or findings that I found. Whereas with some of the influencers who I know, they're creating content. So for them, it's like, okay, create a content, wearing hall outfits, like 3 different outfits. You're getting paid 6K for it. So some of them are getting exposed to money that they've never had before in the area of accountability, in the area of their character. They don't have anyone really checking them because they have everyone fangirling over them. I had those type of people around me. I had some mentors that would be like, Hayley, you ain't a diva now. Like you ain't all that. Like, they'll show me their phone book and be like, this person, that person. I'll be like, that's my favorite singer. I'll be like, these are my friends. I'll be like, you ain't compared to them. So don't try acting like you're a problem free and it's not to come and say you can't aspire for that. And it's not to come and say, you don't have to belittle yourself or to not own what, you're calling or to own what you're walking in. But it's also that reminder to know, hey, don't get complacent. Because complacency is where a lot of people always get trapped. It's like, you get the contract you've been praying for, you get the client you've been praying for. You're kind of like, who's going to chat to me? No one can.
And then you're like, you just kind of leave it there. You're like, I've made it, where there's so much more.
And that's how you get lonely, because you're like, okay, cool, I don't need to pursue anything anymore, because everything that I've kind of worked for has just come towards me. And so I'm always very big on a lot of the people that I mentor. I'm very big on relationship. So I'm very much like, I'm always I'll definitely say I'm on the phone to at least one of my mentees at least every day.
Fantastic.
Somebody like I'm mentoring. Those are the people who I would say I speak to more hands-on outside of my friends, because I know that mentoring is something that changed my life like drastically. Like having somebody mentor me and people who were like older than me outside of my family to actually just be like, okay, host, this is how you do it. Remember, this is your character. This is the rooms you need to be in. But actually, like, how's your heart? Have you forgiven people? Like, how are you in terms of the area of relationships? Like, I had people up in my business. And
real conversations
from young. So I think that's the reason why I was able to just focus and do certain things from a young age, because I had people who were willing to have this hard conversation with me when I was like in my late teens, early 20s.
That's a blessing though.
Yeah.
Because even me as an adult, like indirect mentors for sure, through family, etc. But if I really think about investing in that way, I've not done that before actually. So that's really important.
For me, I have coaches in the UK. I have a coach in America.
Amazing.
I coach now and mentor now. I'm big on, coaching and mentoring and, and I mentor more young people because I know they can't afford my coaching.
Right,
and coaching is more those who are older that have salary and can afford. And even with those that I coach, like I'm very much having some of my coaching sessions, for them, it's just they're crying for an hour.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And just unpacking. And sometimes it's funny how we just assume because somebody's older, they don't have more trauma.
Correct.
But they have a lot of unlearning.
Because they haven't unpacked it. Yeah. They've gone through life up until 50 without even touching on this stuff. Yeah.
Like I'm in a part of a coaching group. I'm part of a group coaching session and majority of them are like, I'll say in their 40s, 50s. And when I hear their stories, and I'm specifically in that group because I'm like the person who's way younger.
Right, got it.
Like for some of them, I'm like the like younger than their youngest child.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing their stories and it's very grounding for me because it's like, wow, like Hayley, like don't forget to do the intentional work.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to get to a place where you're 50 or 60 and you've bottled up so much.
Yep.
And it's not to say it's too late.
Yeah.
But you will start regretting the amount of time you had and not using that time to heal.
Yeah. It's harder as well. Because even now, like first time ever doing therapy, like I've lost my dad. I've gone through grief. I've gone through life.
Wow.
But I think the divorce, I wouldn't say purely because of the divorce, but it definitely triggered me to be like, and I have a young boy. I'm very intentional with my son. I want him to see the best of me and, and also feel comfortable to be vulnerable because I didn't get that growing up. So for me, I was like, I'm going to do the work. Doing it at 37, I hate it because I'm just like, why am I having to unpack all of these years? Like, I'm very uncomfortable in those sessions because I'm not very good at being open.
Yeah.
But luckily my therapist clocked that from early.
That's
so she's
good.
like, I am going to literally poke and prod until you're ready to break and tell me everything.
Yeah.
So, but it's hard. So the longer you leave it, unpacking when you've got habits that you've had for 20 plus years or you've tried to block out things and get on with life and then having to revisit, it's important. The earlier you can do it, the better.
Literally, I'm big on the hard conversations. I literally was speaking to somebody that I kind of work with because at the moment, I'm working with her for a few projects.
Yeah.
And I'm always asking her, I literally said to her, she said, I want to work with you. I said to her, I'm going to be up in your business though.
Yeah.
I want to be up in your business.
Be prepared.
Like, be prepared.
Yeah.
And she's kind of like, yeah, that's cool. And now we've been working together for a few weeks. And I was saying to her, are you okay with it? Because I'm very full on.
Yeah.
But I said to her, you're going to get used to it.
Yeah.
Smoking like crazy, trying to, numb that.
Yep.
Drinking, from the age of like 17.
Those habits
to
that
numb
creep
that.
in. Yep.
And it's because I just never wanted to deal with things. So I just wanted to medicate.
Yeah.
Pacify everything. So I said, if you can learn to have these conversations with me, you won't have to pacify.
Yeah.
And for my whole thing is I just want people to stop pacifying. Deal with it.
Yeah.
Don't conceal, deal.
Correct. Yeah.
Like learn to deal with it rather than conceal.
In a healthy way.
In a healthy way, for sure.
Well, we have talked.
Yeah,
I could be here for 2 hours. Thank you so much for giving me your time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, coming to Dubai, I was like, let me just try. And God made it happen. So I'm so grateful for this conversation.
Same. Thank you. I appreciate this.
Let's talk DXB. Real conversations by real people.